Hey there, I'm Mark, in affiliation with Spectrum Pulse, and we got ASAP Rocky, YoungBoy Never Broke Again, and plenty more on the docket. So it's Billboard Breakdown. I don't remember. So this week wound up pretty damn busy, but that was to be expected. I knew with limited competition, ASAP Rocky was probably going to make the most of his long-delayed comeback, especially if the Zach Bryan album bomb from last week didn't stick around, and that's exactly what happened. But this week also contains a lot of interesting fluctuations across the board. Old songs returning, acts that have previously underperformed now getting a new surge, and if there's time to pay attention for this sort of chaos, I think it's now, especially if it might just be laying the foundations of what we might see for the rest of the year. Now, granted, Harry Styles is probably going to debut at number 1 or close to it next week, and we'll deal with that as it comes, if it comes. But for now, it looks like at least the Hot 100 is set up to be pretty interesting for the foreseeable future. Note I said interesting, not good. But where that starts is in the top 10, where Bruno Mars comfortably held the number 1 with I Just Might. And I say comfortably because while it's playing the margins game, the advantage is in his corner. Dominance on sales, surging radio, and while it did not hold the top spot on streaming, it's still incredibly strong there. Compare this to what probably should have taken the number 1, but is now going to be stranded for the foreseeable future, Man I Need by Olivia Dean at number 2. Where with the radio edge, all she needed was the streaming to keep up, and while she had gains there, they just weren't enough to compensate for sales that are actually slipping. And with Harry Styles coming, I don't see her with enough of an advantage to get to the top, unless she's able to hold radio for a longer run. Now compare this to The Fate of Ophelia by Taylor Swift down at number 3, which still has a lot of sales and got one last radio boost, but it's now absolutely on the way out. The only reason it's holding over Golden from K-pop Demon Hunters down to number 4 is the streaming and sales advantage, because that's still somewhat stable on the radio. That's not the case for Ordinary by Alex Warren holding at number 5 though, because the radio is tipped into outright freefall, but the streaming there is now mostly stable, and that might make a serious challenge from Choosin' Texas by Ella Langley at number 6 all the more difficult. It's actually the dominant song on streaming right now, but in finally getting shipped to a second format outside of Nashville, it might be too little too late to properly capitalize on radio momentum. Congrats, Music Row, for royally screwing it up. Then we got a pickup for Back to Friends by Somber up to number 7, which actually had a remarkably good week on the radio, as did Folded by Kalani at number 8, and this is really to make up for their streaming stagnation. But it was still enough to hold over End Up Beginning by Dijo down to number 9, which they actually did ship back to radio, but probably too late, as the streaming starting to peter out. Finally, Opalite by Taylor Swift is clinging on to number 10. It looks like they finally put some serious muscle behind pushing this to the radio, and streaming actually saw a little uptick, but this is one of those songs where I look at how it was managed and really mismanaged, and I'm just not nearly as impressed as I should be. So naturally, let's talk about our losers and dropouts, where amidst the Zach Bryan album bomb practically evaporating, but for a couple tracks, we actually have a few larger exits, nearly all of them already on the cusp of leaving. 6 Months Later by Megan Moroney, Tears by Sabrina Carpenter, Soda Pop from K-pop Demon Hunters, Don't Mind If I Do by Riley Green featuring Ella Langley, and I don't know, why not throw in Camera by Ed Sheeran along the way. And yet that total exodus of Zach Bryan is probably why we don't have much in the way of losers this week in an album bomb week. Let's start off with the songs that he does have left. Say Why down at 44, Bad News at 74, and Appetite at 84. But on the topic of K-pop Demon Hunters, How It's Done slid down to 66, and Cat's Eye saw Internet Girl just continue to crash out at 85. Outside those, well, Zoo from Shakira from Zootopia 2 mercifully lost a lot down to 95, and I guess nobody should be that surprised that once the novelty faded, First Day Out by Pooh Shiesty hit 41. It'll be interesting to see if it sustains itself enough to clinch a year-end position. It has done better than I expected. We'll have to see how it goes in the mid-range. Now, when we get to our returns and gains, yeah, a lot of traffic here. This week was kind of odd. In the former group, let's start off with the elephant in the room. Why is Trap Queen by Fetty Wap back at 37? I know he got out of jail considerably early. Is that the reason one of the most idiosyncratic trap hits of the mid-2010s is back? where he probably doesn't get enough credit for a run of shockingly good singles. If only the rest of the returns were that good. I'm actually pleasantly surprised that George Burge got It Won't Be Long back at 79, and it's not exactly surprising with her album's release. Madison Beer got Bittersweet back at 68, but the rest is shaky. Don't Kill the Party by Ty Dolla $ign, Quavo, and barely Juicy J at 89. Voy a Levarte pa Puerto Rico by Bad Bunny at 94. Sienna by the Marias at 100. And people are still trying to make Fame Is a Gun by Addison Rae a thing at 92. You can stop that at any time, you know. And speaking of gains I don't like, that group's all over the damn place, because I sure as hell don't like to see Darlin' by Chase Matthew rebounding again at 86, or Who Knows by Daniel Caesar at 67, or WGFT by Gunna and Burna Boy creeping up to 16, or that god-awful remix of Pink Pantheress' Stateside with Zara Larsson at 39. Thankfully, there are some better songs mixed in here. Brunette by Tucker Wetmore has actually kind of grown on me at 69. As has Beautiful Things by Megan Moroney at 55. But it was a week for Jelly Roll to see some traction here, as A-Nen with Shaboozie's now up to 35, and even Bloodline with Alex Warren hit 72. I mean, I love that song. I'm still kind of shocked it's seeing a second wind. But we are in album bomb territory for A$AP Rocky. I'm still a bit surprised we can actually say that, which means that I'm covering whatever's in the top 40, the best or the worst. Outside those, Don't Be Dumb Trip Baby at 73, No Trespassing at 65, Stop Snitching featuring Sauce Walka and Boss Mandilo at 62, Play at 59, and Order of Protection at 54. Yeah, we got a lot of A$AP Rocky songs to talk about otherwise. But we still had a pretty sizable list of new arrivals even with that, so let's get this started with a bit of a curveball. Number 97, Lover, You Should Have Come Over by Jeff Buckley.
You should have come over, 'cause it's not too late.
Yeah, this was only a matter of time. For those of you who don't know, and that's probably more people than you might think, Jeff Buckley is one of the great, sad what-if artists of the 90s. An extremely talented musician who put out Grace, a single critically beloved album in 1994, before his tragic accidental death a couple of years later. He did not have any charting hits when he was alive, and while his material has become pretty widely adored in the decades since, you can actually credit TikTok for this song's revival, and yeah, it feels special and unique. That aching harmonium that opens up into the gentle acoustic groove that gradually ramps into a more watery, soulful, damn near gospel texture as this power ballad will sprawl for nearly 7 minutes. But what's most powerful is Buckley's vocals. It's very telling there's little in the way of overdubs here, but his range was just tremendous, and he brings an impressive amount of complicated emotion through this song. And there is actually a lot going on here. On the surface, it's heartbreak, a yearning call for your ex to come back and try and reconnect. But the deeper root of this is a more complicated question of maturity. He's self-aware enough to realize that he's probably not ready for any sort of stable relationship, but he's also old enough to realize his own self-awareness, which gives him that moment of hope where he might be ready for more. He'll try to convince himself. He's gonna will that experience back through the long, slow crescendo of the song. Honestly, the fact that the performance is so striking to make it try to buy in is what feels like pretty flimsy in-song justification. It speaks to how resonant that performance is. And yeah, I think the song's pretty damn excellent. And while it's easy to award songs from a classic album, I think it's worth it. Compare it to number 93, Mrs. Trendsetter by Lil Baby.
Man, bro, them still thug. Bet shit around the Lord's taking the town, the city flood. Really get money for real. Still ain't sell my put. Jury a light show and all my cars come from roadshow. How you died on me, you supposed to be here ballin', long little joke.
So here's the funny thing. I originally logged this song as Mr. Trendsetter in my notes, and I had a whole rant about who the hell told Lil Baby he was setting any trends, or indeed that he has across his entire career, but in this case, he's talking about a woman. So with another cut from this project called The Leaks, we have, well, honestly, both a little more and less than what I was expecting. I actually kind of like the darker pianos and bells around the pretty well-balanced trap skitters and scratches. It's a good foundation, but but if you think Lil Baby was gonna do anything with it beyond his grind set, brand names, and vague threats, where apparently the Mrs. Trendsetter is someone that everyone bites, but Lil Baby does it a little better, which is why he's ahead of the pack and she's with him, that just takes all the issues I had with the original thought press and then makes it worse. At this point, are we just keeping Lil Baby around because someone needs to fill the niche of mediocre, largely uninteresting and forgettable trap music, where he's repeated so much of the same material for years now? Because this did not do much for me in the past. It does even less now. Next, number 91, Damn I Love Miami by Pitbull and Lil Jon. I honestly don't even know where to start with this. So Pitbull hasn't been a thing on the charts for nearly a decade, Lil Jon likely even longer. I've seen Pitbull live, he's actually great in that setting. I'm not surprised he's kept the touring momentum up, even if the mainstream popularity's kind of petered out beyond him being a meme. But even then, we're bringing back a song from these two from January of 2020. Tied to the Bad Boys for Life soundtrack. I mean, I like that movie more than I expected, but why on earth are we doing this? Okay, so let's get the nostalgia bait out of the way first, as someone who grew up with crunk and has a soft spot. Man, it's nice for a rapper to actually sound like he's having fun being a sleazeball. Man, it's nice for that rapper to have tangible charisma and energy on the mic, where his flow might be kind of simple, but it just goddamn works. Man, it's nice to have Lil Jon just back as one of the best hype men in the industry. Period. That being said, for as much as I might like Pitbull keeping it very regional with all the very distinct Miami shoutouts, this song's got two big problems. The first being that Pitbull has always been a lot more likable with the ridiculous horn dog implication rather than actually talking about sex. Cause it's just gonna sound weird coming out of him, I don't care for it. But the larger issue, I think it's the production. It might have been that swerve towards desaturated trap progressions that don't bring much in the way of melody that really elbowed these two out of the spotlight in the late 2010s, because while it is very cleanly produced and Lil Jon actually gives it some momentum behind the boards, it's not exactly tuneful, which kind of sucks all the fun out of the song. What it reminds me of a lot is Shake It to the Max becoming a thing last year. I'm not complaining that it's there. There's a sorely neglected space in the world for good stupid party jams in the mid-2020s, but it should be better in that lane. It's not bad, not great either. Number 90, Antisocial by YoungBoy Never Broke Again.
I be trying to run my bottle so the plug slower. And this time I seen them things are not that funny anymore. So excuse me if I'm making anti-social.
So the same day as A$AP Rocky released Don't Be Dumb, YoungBoy Never Broke Again put out Slime Cry, a bloated 30-song album where the lead-off single apparently featured Jelly Roll, but it didn't chart at all, in favor of 3 tracks scattered early on the track list, and the best charting one buried halfway in. I guess I'll be blunt, I've been covering YoungBoy since he started charting on the Hot 100 in the late 2010s. I ran out of things to say about his quantity over quality approach years ago. I'm gonna try to keep this brief, no promises. This falls into the territory of smoky angst, where I was actually kind of intrigued by some of the watery R&B keyboards and the fluttery atmospherics, at least at first, until the bass swamps out the mix and the trap percussion comes in, and YoungBoy utterly squanders it with a wildly inconsistent flow. And I tried to buy into his more pensive thoughts on having seen so much success and yet feeling frustrated, unsatisfied, antisocial. But then he's talking about shooting up his ops again and wanting a cannonball signed by Johnny Depp. I'm assuming that's because the Pirates of the Caribbean connection, when the first movie came out when he was 4 years old, and then for Doja Cat to perform for him. Even if she doesn't have a lot of motion going right now, given how unpleasant YoungBoy sounds here, I can't imagine in any universe why'd she do that. I mean, it's not his worst by a mile, but man, what a waste of what it could have been. Let's move on. Number 88, Whiskey Release Me by A$AP Rocky featuring Gorillaz and Westside Gunn.
And the kid read his lips, how to be a pimp, how to be legit, and live to see the shit. dabble, which you pick.
So I got two A$AP Rocky songs to untangle outside the top 40, and both of them I think are really bad. Not in the same tier as Punk Rocky, but among the absolute worst of the album. And it's really frustrating that this is the first one. In my video essay on A$AP Rocky around this album, I brought up this song specifically as feeling really reminiscent of that meme where rappers are often flowing their ass off on Gorillaz songs while Damon Albarn is crooning about something that might be somewhat vaguely related, likely not linked at all. And while that's certainly the feel of this track, the deeper I dig, it might just be worse. The muted melodic honking feels perpetually out of key, not helped by A$AP Rocky's singing, where you're almost grateful when the song drops into this stock clicking trap percussion, only for the outro to decompose even further with Westside Gunn spitting a bunch of ad-libs over what sounds like everyone passing out. Given the content of this song is all about A$AP Rocky having sex, you gotta wonder if this is when he actually gets the whiskey dick as he woozily stumbles and thinks nobody could replace her. And there are so many bad lines on the one verse here. The Tourette's line, the pre-cum line, the line about getting threesomes, never four or less, which feels like it's supposed to be this numeric sequence reference, unless he's talking about getting no less than 5 threesomes with this partner. And given that he's obviously talking about Rihanna, I just don't remotely believe that. And then the out of nowhere Killer Mike hashtag reference that had me wondering what Run the Jewels song could have possibly been running through his head mid-coitus. I choose to think that it's Love Again, Act and Yell Back from Run the Jewels 2, with Gangsta Boo on it. A far better song than this shambling mess. It's a complete waste of Westside Gunn and Gorillaz. What a mood killer. Number 83, another episode by YoungBoy Never Broke Again. And here we see YoungBoy on production that more naturally fits all the deranged violence, with the flattened warp of guitar and the weedy keys as the trap knock comes in and he starts ranting about everything that he's killing, like shooting at girls to make them dance for him, or shooting up a school dance as a teenager, or the people he's killed in the industry, where he'll even drive around with his kids while shooting people, and how even despite his time in jail, he's still gonna rant about all of it on the microphone with a flow that's even more sloppy than usual. I gotta wonder if it's that presidential pardon he got from last year from the POS in chief that has him talking this wild and out of pocket, where he's assuming there will be no consequences for any of this. But even if we're assuming DAs have somehow gotten less racist and willing to use rap music in their trials, this still fundamentally doesn't work for me because YoungBoy is such a sloppy, undisciplined presence on the mic. It's unbridled id, and there's nothing close to refinement or cleverness about it, especially when I've heard this so many goddamn times before. So yeah, it might be more of what YoungBoy does in his comfort zone. I'm not behind it either. Number 82, Midnight Sun by Zara Larsson.
Now we ain't got a town on one. A never-ending midnight sun.
Okay, it looks like we're actually doing this with Zara Larsson, a full-on breakthrough from her surprisingly well-reviewed album last year. I had considered actually covering it, but after Poster Girl was a dated, badly sequenced mess of 2021, I kind of pushed Zara Larsson to the back of my mind, even if I think she's always had a lot of talent. So with this title track, well, someone took a note from Pink Pantheress, cribbing a lot of the stuttering, aggressive tempos of the drum and bass, as the thicker electro house elements construct a little bit more of a groove. It's better than what they actually did on Stateside, I'll give them that. The melody is kind of thin and really brittle, but if it's trying to center Zara Larsson's multi-track vocals in full dance floor diva position, I mean, she's long been good in that spot, even if I think it leaves the crescendo a little underpowered, paying off the build and the drums, and the song a little bit over-compressed as a whole. Granted, for a track that is all about its momentum, for a late night drive with this guy where apparently his playlist is going off and they're both hot and horny for each other, that's effectively all it really needs to be. And while I wish this could have as explosive a climax as, say, Never Forget You with MNEK, the slinky build is actually still pretty fun. So yeah, if this and Lush Life is what we're getting from Zara Larsson's return in 2026, I'm not about to complain about it. Pretty damn good song. Worth hearing. Number 81, Air Force Black DeMarco by A$AP Rocky.
Nice to see you once again.
Yeah, this was the other A$AP Rocky song I thought was just terrible across the board. So let's deal with the bargain barrel oily sludge that is trying to pass off as rage and grab notes from opium, and I can't believe I'm gonna say this, they seem to do this sound better. For some reason, Greg Kurstin is here on production, but the name that jumped out in the worst way was Digital Nas, whose biggest credit was Carnival in 2024, and this song has that similar curdled vibe where the drum texture is crushed, and then for a hook it becomes this dreamy, half-crooned psychedelic thing with no coherent transitions because contrast and juxtaposition is apparently what matters. Look, I'm far from the biggest fan of Mac DeMarco, but is this what A$AP Rocky thinks that his sound is like, that he's trying to imitate? But then there's the bragging on this thing. Had an anorexic model bitch, she was an eater. Oh, wait a minute. Hold the phone. Bad line aside, I thought you weren't a player anymore, Rocky. What's this about? Along with a reference to other broads with you that apparently on that verse, and then the late night James Corden line on the second verse. Then trying to match his high fashion glass slippers to the porcelain of his toilets, and then him saying that all his bars are MVP. That is clearly not even close. If I felt like this juxtaposition felt coherent or purposeful, I might give it a pass. But I don't hear the through line. It sucks too. Skip it. Number 80, Headtap by YoungBoy Never Broke Again.
Be holding a fit down back of the Glock with a box and we get 140 rappers. We taking a penny, playing with stripping the bitch up in public. We thugging and loving. As soon as we come in this bitch, we'll rob this motherfucker.
So YoungBoy is now talking about shooting people in the head, and while the blubbery bass is better mastered around the filmy trap hi-hats, the synths and fake horns get subsumed into this ugly, cheap-sounding mess where he barely even attempts to stay on beat, as per usual, and then just slurs his way through the hook. And there's even less to say about it. It barely runs 2 minutes. YoungBoy goes off about robbing and shooting people, and then on the second verse, fucking some girl, where he'll drill diamonds inside of her mind, which I'm assuming refers to making her infatuated with his lifestyle. I mean, this is the serious lyrical analysis we're getting here, even though he won't let her hold his gun because he still has to be the one in charge. He just feels so transparently cheap and empty, the laziest possible power fantasy with machismo that I just find it tedious. You keep selling those verses like pies, dude. I'm not buying it. Number 63, Bruce Wayne by YoungBoy Never Broke Again.
I'm in here with these bitches, they ready to make. Shooters just like them killers, I ain't never desert. I won't go on a mission, she want me to lay in the house and desert. She been loving me, fucking me, behind my bed, she thugging me.
I can only imagine this charted as high as it did thanks to SEO and trying to draw the laziest possible parallel to Batman. There's no music video, that'd be the obvious way to draw attention. And while I've seen folks describe this as the best song on the album, I had some serious doubts, especially when the melody is this syrupy synth, the distant guitar, and cheap-sounding stuttering bass and trap percussion that we've heard before. And this is falling somewhere towards the love song side of YoungBoy's catalog, which of course begins with a demand for a blowjob and plenty of violence and suspicious threats that she's going to want a kid with him, you know, alongside his at least 10 other kids, because she's doing things he doesn't like. You know, because he's been treating her so well here. But it's the lines on the second verse about her treating him like he's a child, like the surrogate mother figure that he likes, that basically crystallized the appeal for this for me. It's fundamentally immature music getting pushed to predominantly teenage white boys who admire the fantasy but can't fathom any of the consequences, where the tangible problem comes in them being how they want to treat women longer term as they get older. I think the kids deserve better. And I was always more of a Superman fan than a Batman fan anyway. Skip it. Number 51, Wish I Didn't by Megan Moroney.
Take me out, wreck your bed, make you all I'm talking about. Consider this a warning. You've got one
one shot to listen. I think I'm falling for you. Don't make me wish I didn't.
My biggest frustration with Megan Moroney is that I really should like her music more than I do, that it's a half step away from being great, but tends to have enough niggling issues to slip into just decent for me. That was true about both 6 Months Later and Beautiful Things. I don't have high expectations for this next single. And I don't even want to say I was waiting for the pop pivot, but the second I heard that stuttering drum machine nestled amidst the brittle acoustics and the sharper groove, that seems a little bit at odds with Megan Moroney's world-weary vocal fry, to say nothing of the more distorted guitar on that hook. I knew we were eventually here. It was in the cards. It reminds me a lot of the clunky, buzzy, percussion-driven overproduction that would occasionally show up on a Maren Morris album cut, and that kind of aligns with the songwriting, where Megan Moroney's trying to give a warning to this guy with a heartbreaker reputation not to treat her in the same way because some cold killers have guns, but I've got songs. And, okay, I'm not about to discount that. I've seen women in both pop and country exact their revenge in striking detail on record, sometimes coming from sources you wouldn't expect. I never thought Kelsey Ballerini would make a breakup project with the sort of teeth that she had a couple of years ago, but I'm not as quite convinced with Megan Moroney, and I think it comes down to the vocal delivery, where she just sounds perpetually tired, where it sounds like any punch back against this guy would be working uphill from the start. It's not as motivating. Don't get me wrong, this brand of pop country is probably going to work. I think there's a nostalgic hole for it in the marketplace, but again, I really want to like it more. Again, just decent. Number 33, Stole Ya Flow by A$AP Rocky.
So, just my pole and my kids. Swear to never lie, cause my heart holds to die. Then I sold the switch, then I hit it with a kiss. Mwah.
Let's be brutally honest here. As much as I've got no problem with A$AP Rocky shooting back at Drake, this line of attack feels cheap, transparently phony too, even if it's bound to work. A$AP Rocky knows that Drake has unresolved feelings towards Rihanna. He shot at Rocky plenty of times over it, and Rocky's got the trump card of, well, she's with me, she has my kids, so I stole ya bitch. But let's be real, we know Rihanna chose Rocky. There was no theft involved here. And even if the hypocrisy's the point in the bigger power game, Rocky, you cribbed the majority of your vibe from the South. A lot of this album is nakedly stealing from other acts who did it first and better. Many of the allegations thrown in Drake's direction could easily be redirected at you, especially when you include lines like, been shitting on everything, wasn't even potty trained. I wouldn't even try the commercial lines against Drake. We all know where your money's coming from, Rocky. It's not that impressive, especially when he can get cattier, like with that body shame line and the line of being sensitive, and it's quite frankly way funnier. You want to sound unbothered here, and it's why a lot of the punches feel kind of a little flimsy the way they are. Thankfully, I actually like the production, the fat keening warps of synth that set up this grinding, stormy vibe around the scratchy trap groove, where the vocals echo amidst the dark clouds, and they sound convincingly implacable by the time the pianos and the operatic vocals crash in, even if I don't really care for that shouted outro. If there's a case where the style's doing the heavy lifting, it is here. So let's compare it to number 24, Helicopter by A$AP Rocky. Okay, I get why it was a single. Rocky wanted the obvious festival banger, so why not bring back Kelvin Crash and Soulfin 3000, who did a lot of work for him over the past 15 years, with the percussive, bassy synths and the oily warps around the lockstep trap percussion. Where to Rocky's credit, he bends around the triplet flows pretty damn well. If only he had more to say with it, alongside the stock flexing and sounding so faded when he tries to get off who gets more pussy than a lesbian on the first verse, where his helicopter reference, which also sounds weirdly faded, on the hook no less, it's tied to someone taking off their shirt and whirling it around. You know, like they're in the stands at a college football game. And truthfully, I don't even hate that line about folks doing anything for a blue check and playing internet games. If A$AP Rocky wants to say that he's above that shit, I'm good with him there. Even if technically on Twitter it's like $8, but for a verse that's all about accentuating how all his enemies are broke, that would work. But again, the more A$AP Rocky tries to claim that he invented all these trends when he is a better borrower and curator, the less I buy it. So it's an A$AP Rocky banger, not his worst, but not something I'd probably revisit. And honestly, where I'm not surprised, another song caught more attention, that being finally number 23, Stay Here for Life by A$AP Rocky featuring Brent Faiyaz.
Downs on the clock, got me looking down on my watch. Wish I could buy time back.
So I got some pushback in my video essay in highlighting one of the main reasons that A$AP Rocky has stayed as cool as he has in the 2020s, specifically is his relationship with Rihanna. Especially around women, it's a really strong association. So I guess I'm not surprised that he recruited Brent Faiyaz for the Weeknd impression on an R&B crossover ballad where he's trying to hold on to as much time as he can to actually woo her. It's actually a more emotionally honest track than I expected coming from A$AP Rocky. And well, that contracting in my body line is a really stupid one after the bass switch, the sincerity is a better look, and I think you'll get credit for it. It is a major factor. The fact it charted this high says something. But I think where I'm cooler on it comes from the production. The warping, slightly discordant twinkle, it's actually a sample of Mewtwo by Ken Carson, and I guess I'll give Rocky credit for smoothing over some of the rough edges as the crisp trap percussion drops in, but it still sounds really overcompressed and wonky, giving Brent Faiyaz very little melodic support, where I think I actually like it when it drops into the chopped and screwed second half of the song, even if they wind up burying A$AP Rocky's voice along the way in lo-fi filters. But again, it's very revealing of where he's pulling his sound. If you're grabbing from your proteges of your protege and then putting the Texas screw job on it, it's not nearly revolutionary. We've heard this before from you. It's a little better than I originally remembered, but man, we could have had Robbery with Doechii charting. Real missed opportunity. And yeah, that's the week. Way too much crap to get through, at least the worst fallout fast. Both coming from A$AP Rocky, with Air Force Black DeMarco taking the bottom spot, and Whiskey Release Me with Gorillaz and Westside Gunn as the pretty obvious dishonorable mention, albeit a real disappointing one. I wanted more for both the guest stars. The best? Yeah, it feels like kind of cheating to put the Jeff Buckley song there, but Lover, You Should Have Come Over, it's head and shoulders better than anything here. And I'll give honorable mention to Midnight Sun by Zara Larsson. Pretty easy choice. Next week, I guess it's Harry Styles time, and seeing what sort of fallout might happen from all this. Stay tuned for that. But until then, I'm Mark, you're watching Billboard Breakdown, affiliated with Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.